Hare Krishna everyone, please accept my humble obeisances. Happy Vyasa Puja. Having to open the memory box and revise all of the old memories with Srila Gurudeva definitely left me with a very special feeling. Whenever he would visit, he would bring about a special excitement and spiritual sweetness that I think was felt by everyone. I remember being young during that time, and I felt a longing whenever he would leave, that I would write poems and sometimes I'd have dreams with him.
This is one of my favorite memories of Srila Gurudeva. It happened in 2001 on Govardhan Puja, and as everybody knows, Govardhan Puja at any temple is one of the most crowded and hardest to get into see the deities because the lines are around the block. So Houston was no different at that time. And so me and my friend Leela Manjari, we wanted to get in to see the deities, but we weren't wanting to wait in line for hours and hours to see the deities because the kirtan was going to end, and that was the fun thing. So we had this brilliant idea to sneak into the temple through the windows. And you remember the old temple had this huge window. So she went in first, everything was fine, and then I'm climbing in, and my legs are straddled over the window. One's inside the temple, the other one is still outside, and Srila Gurudeva glances over at me. And I freeze. I think I'm gonna get it. I think he's gonna chastise me because my sari is pulled up to my knees. I thought it was to say it's not appropriate because I'm showing my legs to everybody. But instead, he breaks into the biggest smile, and then he nods for me to continue to climb in through the window. So then I pay my obeisances, and then me and Leela Manjari walk over then to Srila Gurudeva because he motioned for us to walk over. And he said how pleased he was to see how eager we were to see Giriraj Govardhan on Govardhan Puja, that we even climbed through the window to see him.
Srila Gurudeva had been doing some preaching in Tennessee, and my dad received a book during his lunch break working at an engineering firm in Knoxville, and eventually took to the philosophy and started to make contact with Srila Gurudeva. And on occasions they would go and visit with Srila Gurudeva and take my older brother and I along with them, as we were just pretty young kids at the time. I was really young, just starting to crawl and being able to pull myself up on furniture. And so during one of the meetings, I pulled myself up against the leg of his desk and reached up onto the low desk and started to grab things off of it, and probably put them directly into my mouth, as most toddlers tend to do, embarrassing my parents, no doubt, in the process. Srila Gurudeva told me no. Meanwhile, I just looked at them as I started to reach for whatever it was I was trying to grab. And I think Srila Gurudeva laughed and said, "Oh, he's a controller." You know, Indra's a perfect name for him.
My only memory of Gurudev that I clearly, vividly remember is at Melbourne Temple in the courtyard. And I mainly remember the big spot and the smile. It was his last trip to Melbourne, and I was sitting in the courtyard in my mum's lap. And I was lucky enough that Gurudev came over and actually blessed me, and before heading back into his car to leave. And my brother was also lucky enough at 1-year-old in Fiji during darshan. My dad actually took him and put his head on Gurudev's feet.
Shamli and I, when we were dressing up, and I was Balaram and she was Krishna, and that Srila Gurudeva told me, "Oh, Balaram, you carry the universe," or something like that. And then I said, "Oh, and what does Shamali have to do?" And he said, "Oh, you're just like your dad, always wanting to delegate."
I remember being very young. Srila Gurudeva used to tease me. He used to say, "You must be a Barbie doll," he would say to me. And he would look for my batteries. He would say, "Where are your batteries?" He would look in my back to see if he could find the batteries that were running me, causing me to walk and talk. And he'd give my cheeks a little pinch. And I was so young and shy. Of course, I would just burst into tears, just because I guess I was so shy.
In August 1997, my mom was cooking for Srila Gurudeva at his house in Vrindavan. She wanted some berries to make a chutney, and I was very excited to volunteer to pluck some from his courtyard. I brought Janvi along, and together we plucked a whole bunch of berries, along with all their twigs and even the leaves. Do you remember what Gurudeva told us?
Yes,
he shouted from his house,
Tease, tease.
I also always remember he was technically the first person to teach me how to ride a bike, because one time I was there with my bike and he said, come here, and he grabbed onto the handle and had me pedal and showed me how to ride a bike for the first time.
When Gurudeva was in school, he used to give Saturday morning lectures. After those lectures, the kids would run up these stairs, line up against these railings, and await sweets that Mataji's had made. He would give sweets to each kid and usually say something sweet to each of them. To me, he used to sing Radha Kunda, Shama Kunda, Giri Govardhan. So that was one nice pastime.
Many times he would come over to my house to have lunch, and my parents would be preparing everything and serving, and I was young, so I would try to serve as well, and sometimes he would let me, but other times Srila Gurudev would invite me over to come sit with him and have lunch, and afterwards he would go over to our living room and lie down on the couch on his left side to digest. And I was 5 years old, so he would tell me, Shamali, go get a book and I'll read it to you. So I would go, and I remember Mother Yogamaya gave me this book that was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, but instead of Goldilocks it was Shamali, so I was the protagonist, and Shamali and her friend Sarat and Kalindi. So I would run and get this book and sit next to Srila Gurudev, and he would caress my hair sometimes and read to me this book with Shamali as the star.
I'd like to share specifically the story in 1999 when he last visited the Philippines. We went to the beach. Everyone was swimming with him. I was on the shore at that time, and I was talking to Narad Muni Prabhu. And so I saw Srila Gurudev was off the shore. I swam and tried to follow them. And so I think halfway through, my leg cramped. And there was no other devotees, and I was halfway in between the devotees and the shore, and Srila Gurudev was a couple of 100 meters away. And I kind of panicked, so I stopped, and I tried to massage my leg and just avoid myself from drowning. And it was a very painful experience, but I think Srila Gurudev kind of noticed that I was struggling in the water. So he came, and I saw him. He immediately asked me to go on his back, and I was kind of scared. I was like, okay, should I go on his back? He's Srila Gurudev, he's Guru. You mustn't go on his back, it would be an offense. But Srila Gurudev was very adamant, and he took me and put me on his back, and we swam back to the shore.
Probably the sweetest memory that I really, really would love to remember. So when I was maybe around 7, 8, I got really sick, and I had a kind of a thing where I couldn't walk for some time, and this is when Mother Kirtida was very sick, and she was in Dallas, and every evening we would all go to her room and do beautiful kirtans and bhajans, and so I couldn't walk or sit up, so sometimes my parents she would let me lie in bed with her. And then one time I was doing that, and Srila Gurudev came earlier than expected, so I would be allowed to stay in the bed, but then obviously when Srila Gurudev would come, then my parents would carry me off the bed, and then so that Srila Gurudev could sit by her. And my dad rushed, he told me this story now just a couple of days ago, and he said that, it's really sweet, that Srila Gurudev, he was going to take me away, and Srila Gurudev said, no, that's okay, let her stay. And then he sat down and had me put my head in his lap. So I was lying next to Mother Kirtida and with my head on Srila Gurudev's lap. And I don't remember this at all, but obviously I remember some of the emotion behind it, I hope, because I'm tearing up now.
My fondest memory of Srila Gurudev goes back to when I was 7 years old. I was playing outside with a bunch of kids. After the initiation ceremony, Mum and Dad came out, they yelled out for me. I ran up the stairs. They gave me a garland, and before Mum could say anything, I've put it on me. And Mum's like, no, it's for Srila Gurudev. Take it off. So we stood in line, waiting, while everybody else gave Srila Gurudev a thank you card and the garland or bouquet of flowers. When it came to my turn, I've gone up and put the garland around Srila Gurudev. He looked at me, smiled, and on his left side he had a whole bunch of cards and garlands that he's been gifted. but on its right side he had one tucked away that he pulled out for me, and he gave that to me because when you open it up it was a musical card. And I know it's something little, but it sticks with you for the rest of your life. You remember, you know, one of the most greatest Prabhupada disciples to do that, and you're like, me?
Oh, the morning programs were so fun with Srila Gurudev there. I remember me, Surat, and Kalindi, they used to call us the three little girls in the community. Whenever Srila Gurudev would get there, we'd always, like hawks, have our eyes very pendant of, okay, what is Srila Gurudev going to do? And when he'd start approaching the Charnamritam table, we'd all run over there and be like, okay, we're ready to give it to him. And we'd alternate. Sometimes I would give him the Charnamritam, sometimes I'd pour the water, and we'd go switching who would dry his hand. And then we'd all run out and be ready with the shoes. So when he'd leave the temple, he'd come outside to place his feet in the shoes, and sometimes whenever we'd feel in a jokester mood, we'd put the left shoe in the right side and the right shoe in the left side, and Srila Gurudev would be like, oh no, and he would go along with it and be like, now I can't walk, and we'd all be laughing and looking at each other and all be so excited to do it all again the next day during the morning program.
We're here in Srila Gurudev's darshan room. Just across the hallway is the kitchen that I got to help cook for him during the summers, during one summer while he was at SMU. And sometimes while he was having lunch, I would get to sit just next to the door here while he was taking his prasadam. Sometimes he would be meeting with devotees or taking prasadam with devotees, or just talking to me. Generally it was small talk, asking me about my life, what I was doing. I was always impressed by how involved he was in the details of devotees' lives and of the details of the temple and what was going on. I remember one time specifically he was asking about the inspection for one of the temple vehicles. He knew it was expired and that they were having trouble getting the inspection done. So with everything going on in his life, that was impressive to me.
As I got older, my legs were very bow-legged. My knees were very spread out, and he was worried that I would have a problem walking. So every time he saw my grandmother, he would be like, you have to take her to the hospital to figure out why her legs are shaping this way. Will she need correctional shoes? What will she need? How will she be able to walk properly when she's older if her legs are so oval? My grandmother always speaks about how persistent and worried he was that I wouldn't be able to walk properly. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj always made sure to take care of not only all his disciples, but his disciples' children as well. So I thank him so much from the bottom of my heart for that.
I remember when I was younger, I made a drawing for Srila Gurudev of Krishna and the gopis. And you know, it was a child's drawing. I put all of my heart and soul into it, but still it wasn't a Van Gogh. Nonetheless, I found out later on that Srila Gurudev had kept it all of the years, and as a bookmark in one of the books when he was studying at Cambridge University.
He had a way of making every single person he came across feel as if they were special to him. And it says a lot about his character and the love that he was able to show to each and every person he came across.
Srila Gurudev, we all miss you so much, and your presence, it never ceases to be felt by all of your devotees. We love you very much, and happy Vyasa Puja.